Welcome to a Nothing from Nothing production. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Christopher with Bill Turley, and this is the Junction podcast, a podcast about growing up in Brooklyn in the 1970s and 80s. We're hoping to protect the names of the innocent as well as the extremely guilty, and there were plenty of those. Well, here goes. Welcome back to the Brooklyn Junction. I'm here with some very old, very old dear friends. No, they look fantastic.
You mean longtime friends?
Longtime friends. I didn't mean to say old. I mean, you guys look fantastic. And, I have to say amongst the three of us, I probably look the best. But put that aside. I'm here with some good friends. We're going to do an episode about Catholic school and upbringing in Brooklyn and specifically as it relates to the schools we went to. We all know Bill Turley, my podcast partner over the last 12 episodes. And I'd like to introduce a very good friend, Stephen Dima.
Hey, I'm excited to be on this show here. I've been a fan for a while, and you guys doing a great job. My name is Stephen Dima. I'm from a lovely part of Brooklyn called Marine Park. And I still live in Brooklyn, and I'm still excited about the old neighborhood. I don't live there, but I'm excited to share some memories of growing up in that part of Brooklyn.
So this episode happens to be very timely because the other day I was watching the news, a local New York news station, and they had a story about Catholic schools closing in the Brooklyn Archdiocese. And I'm looking at the screen and I see a picture of my alma mater, St. Teresa of Lisieux, also known as the Little Flower, which was located on Avenue D and Troy Avenue. And I went to elementary school there from 1964 to 1972. And, it's interesting thing about Brooklyn is that you would identify yourself more by the parish you lived in rather than the neighborhood. Am I right about that?
Well, for me, certainly. I have to say, I'm from St. Thomas.
Yeah. And know, when you got to high school, especially, I mean, we're all Knights of the Nazareth Round Table.
That's right.
Yeah. They always identified kids by the parish. Oh, those are those, Lady Help of Christians kids, or, those are Good Shepherd kids.
Well, something, it's so spot on because my father-in-law, who's, in the early, he's 94, right? He's sitting in the back car and I played our first episode. He goes, that's absolutely true. It's exactly what we did. We called ourselves which parish we were in.
Well, my mother always told this famous story about her being in the beauty parlor where there were a lot of Jewish women from the neighborhood, and she mentioned something about where she lived, and the woman said, "That's my parish," which is
it's a little New Orleans,
So the schools, of course, were attached to a church. And they were normally taught by a religious order. And in our school, we had the Sisters of Mercy, and which is a misnomer if I ever heard one. So we had our classes were co-ed in elementary school, but you not so in where you guys went to school, is that right? And where did you go? You were at St. Thomas Aquinas, right?
I went to St. Thomas, and no, there were no, there weren't any girls in my class until I got to sophomore year of high school. But it was an interesting thing because the folks in the neighborhood who were still there, and we ended up having a 25th year anniversary for our 8th grade graduating class, which was at Monsignor King Hall, which was the auditorium featured in the latest version of West Side Story, by the way, if you didn't know, and probably the best part of that movie. But anyway, and so it was an extraordinary thing because I went there, everyone was there. It was very cool. And I started to realize I was meeting girls for the first time because I didn't know them when I was going to grammar school because we were in two separate buildings with two separate entrances and exits. And there were when I was walking in, there was someone I met that we all know that I have known all my life. and I didn't even realize that we went to school together at grammar school. I met her. We started hanging out in high school. It's really crazy. So it's an interesting thing. There was
I was frightened of I figured it out by junior year, but
yes,
being separated like that, which I
yeah,
still argue is unnatural, right?
it is
Um,
unnatural, but it also makes things exciting if you know what I mean. Anyway, go ahead.
yes, but I'd be like, meeting the first girls. And I remember one time I was at a seventh grade dance,
Yeah.
and one particular friend of mine, his name is Scott, I won't give a last name, had a little bone chip in his neck,
Oh,
right? And he was a handsome guy. Yeah, there was nothing wrong with him. And I said, I've got all the kids, because it was St. Thomas, all the girls were on one side of the auditorium and all the boys were on the other. And never the trains, and now the songs were going on and
right.
nobody was mingling, right? We were separated in the dance, except for a couple of smart boys that had already gotten girlfriends. So I said to him, I went over and asked a girl to dance, and she said yes. Then I asked another, but I would just dance with the girl and walk away. I didn't go, hey, would you like to meet?
You couldn't seal the deal, right?
All I did was
Yeah.
all of the show I had the chutzpah to go over there
Yeah.
and do it. And I did it. And the kid looks to me and he had that bone chip in his neck. He's a better looking guy than me. And I go, he said, I can't get these girls to dance with me. You see this bone chip in my neck?
I'm trying to imagine what a bone chip is like that you could see. It's really disturbing. But anyway, that's the two things that I want to say is one is I've always wondered, like, like the Catholic schoolgirl uniform. Is that like, were we influenced by that? Was that is that like a pre thing that's why, was it a form of torture, or you know what I mean? Like I think
You mean like a chastity belt or something, or an Iron
no,
Maiden or something?
no, not like that.
No.
No, something like the whole image of that was did they do it that way because of it, or were we influenced because of it? Do you know what I mean? Like, which came first,
Yeah.
the chicken or the egg, the skirt, or like, my, and it was, and obviously it wasn't helped by the fact that they were this mysterious thing across the street. You know what I mean? That, it just makes it, all my life, I've always, thought that like being Catholic sort of helped things in some way. It was, if you follow what I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like I said, I mean, I wonder about kids today that like, where's the excitement? You know what I mean? Like there's nothing, there's no taboo, right? I mean, like you just like Google whatever the hell, I like, you know what I'm saying? Like all we had was taboo. Even like just girls themselves were taboo. So in some ways, I don't know, maybe I don't like.
You guys reminded me of something. You were talking about dances in elementary school. We didn't have dances at the school, but there was an organization called the Junior Catholic Daughters of America.
Well, that sounds fantastic. See
Not
what I'm
kidding.
saying? Yeah.
Did you have that at St. Thomas or no?
No, but we needed that. Where
We had,
yeah.
we had the Junior Catholic Daughters of America, and they used to have dances. So this was like the Catholic version of the Girl Scouts,
Right. Yeah, sure, sure. Well, we
So,
had those.
Yeah, I don't know if they went camping or anything like that, but they
No, they just went to the auditorium. That was it.
yeah, they used to have like this special uniform. It was green with white lettering, and I know the girls who belonged to that group would wear that on Fridays when they had their meetings. But they used to have dances at the American Legion post, and so and they would invite
On the
boys
Legion, on the American Legion.
That's right. It was
It's
the Cummings Brothers post on Avenue D.
Well, you told me in a conversation off air that whenever you see a supermodel in a green high school uniform, you get a mild erection.
that he's talking about Bill, not me, by the way. Just
Yeah.
Kidding, Bill. Kidding, Bill.
It's,
I'll have-
Yeah.
my mother was a Girl Scout leader, and some of my fondest memories was that, and it was all in the girls' auditorium, which smelled like Coca-Cola and ammonia. So I'm still turned on by that to this day. But anyway, it was basically like me. I was probably like 5 or 6 or 7, right? And then like the whole entire girls, so, because I don't know, they didn't have babysitters back then, whatever. But so my mother would just take me wherever she went. So there she was. So there I was with like, I don't know how many are in the troop, right? 12, whatever. all doting on me because I was, a little kid. And so that was pretty exceptional. There was like one girl that reminded me of Dorothy on The Wizard of Oz. So I used to call her Dorothy. And I remember she came to visit me in my at our apartment one day. It was a huge it was a big time.
Sounds pretty exciting. I'm jealous of your childhood. Well, it's okay. So it's an interesting thing, growing up with that separation that didn't, and Bill, did you have it all the way through high school?
No, we had co-ed classes in elementary school, first through eighth grade. And then when I got to Nazareth, at Nazareth, I was never attending when we had girls in the school. It was all boys throughout.
And that's when you needed to be. That's the strange part.
Yeah.
Well, that's because the monthly dances were such a big thing. We used to invite girls from, St. Brendan's, Catherine Macaulay, St. Edmunds,
Well, that was
wherever.
St. Edmunds. Yeah, that was amazing. I remember the day, like the first day of like the school going co-ed, which for me was junior year, and suddenly everyone started taking showers and like staying after school. That was like the most striking thing about it. But you reminded me, and I was very involved in the plays, which a number of us were, and so St. Edmunds would borrow the boys because that was a
That's
whole
right,
girls'
they
school.
did.
So these were, again, very exciting times. So it was like, seven of us to like 40 high school girls. It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. I still,
Well, when you and my brother were up on the stage there, I was one of the dorks down in the orchestra pit. So
that's right. That's right. But, that's definitely one of those, boy, if I go back in time,
Well, I had, I want to get into some of the more specific stories.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The title of this particular is Miss Grosso and Why I Hate Mayonnaise.
Oh, it was a great day. I was about 8 years old, and you remember, I guess we would eat lunch in the classroom, is my memory, and my mom would make me tuna fish all the time, right? And so she would wrap it in tin foil, right? Reynolds wrap, I think they still have, and
White bread, soggy.
why? That's right. That's correct. So by the time you got, it would end up wrapped around the soda can, right? And all squished, and then you'd open it up, and it was kind of gross to begin with. But it was this Miss Grosso decided to come walking down the aisle, and for no reason, and not announced or anything, she picked up my sandwich and took a bite of it, and it was so it was so disgusting. It was like, she like wiping her mouth and like, I mean, it's kind of, that might have been the meanest thing any Catholic school teachers ever done to anyone, in my view. But I've not been able to be in the room with mayonnaise all these years later. I hate mayonnaise. It's a very well-known thing.
Post-traumatic mayonnaise disorder.
It was, yeah. I remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, it was just like so gross, and I've never been able to eat. I eat tuna fish, but it's, not with mayonnaise. Nothing with mayonnaise. It's horrible. It's gross. Anyway, sorry.
Well, I developed a particular aversion to mustard after I changed one of my children's diapers.
That makes sense.
So let's continue on this particular
You mean Miss
subject.
Grosso? She loomed large
Yes.
in my life. Now, one thing I want to say is, and I think we talked about this at some point, that, there's a lot of people that have like very strong, powerful stories of their experience in grammar school and particularly in Catholic school. And I didn't really have any of those, which I'm grateful for and feel fortunate. But, Miss Grosso probably comes the closest to that, And the other thing that I found for me in my experience, I found very interesting was most of the like priests and stuff. I can't speak about the nuns, but most of the priests were the brothers, right? Were my favorites. I found the sort of lay teachers like Miss Grosso to be the more, to fit the sort of profile of the classic Catholic school. There was a guy that, I'm trying to think of it, something that rhymes with his name. But, if you said his name, if you said his name wrong, you would have to go up in front of the class and he would smack you. You put your hands out and he would smack you with the pointer, which hurt really bad. But it was this sort of like weird, sadistic kind of thing, because you tell a kid don't say my name like that. First, they're going to find any reason to sort of do that, And so it was but those are the sort of lay teachers. But to get back to Miss Grosso, so I was a massive Dark Shadows fan. As a kid, as many
Dark
of us were,
Shadows
and
was a
I
short-lived.
remember cleaning. It wasn't that short-lived, Marky, but it was on for a number of years, and it was a soap opera that was on right after
Oh, yeah, I
school.
offended you.
Like you did, yeah, yeah,
You
you did.
jumped right down my
Well,
throat.
yeah. Anyway, it was Jonathan Frid, Barnabas Collins. It was. I was just obsessed, like many of us were, and I used to clean out my toy box and line it, wait for my sister to come over so I could jump out and bite her. But anyway, my mom bought me this Dark Shadows book, which I guess you would refer to it as a novel, right? I'm sure it was. It probably had a picture of Barnabas and Victoria on the cover, and it was sort of romantic. And, if there was anything in that book, I was 8 years old. If there was anything in that book that, there was probably a lot in that book I didn't understand, right? And I know that I remember my mother being very proud because I had like a higher grade reading level at that point. And see, I read all the time. Most of it was, about Barnabas Collins, but whatever, right? This is what kids do to this day. And anyway, it was here we go. So the one thing I learned was never keep anything on your desk. Let's get back to that because once again there was the Dark Shadows book sitting on my desk. Miss Grosso comes walking down the aisle, and she picks the book up off the desk, and she starts yelling and screaming like, "See this, children? This is a novel!" and like hitting me in the head with it. And at one point, I guess it was a college ring. It was like this big ring. She started like clobbering me in the head with her ring. Of course, it was pretty confusing because you have to remember my mom bought me this book. You know what I mean? And it's so like so there is something to be said about shame and Catholic school, but. Again, I don't harbor any. I think I find it to be an amusing
Well,
story
it's
now.
amusing. It's definitely
Obviously, these
amusing.
things wouldn't
It's
happen these
like
days.
Dark Shadows was from 1966 to 1971. So I stand
That's
mildly
right.
corrected because as the stomach turns or as the world turns, it's got into its 40th year. But
Yeah.
anyways,
So there was a character on Dark Shadows, if I recall. His name was Quentin. Yeah,
Oh man,
and Quentin's
Quentin's
theme was
theme,
like a
which
major. Yes,
la
it
la
was a major
la
hit.
la
The instrumental
la.
on
I still have.
like Top 40 Radio.
I
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I still
yeah,
have the single, and I used to have a radio show
yeah.
that played all the time. It was Quentin and then David and Amy with the kids who would go. The thing was in the house they would go through this crawl space or whatever, this little door into this room, and there was an old Victrola, right, one of those antique Victrolas, and they would put the record
Oh,
on, and
yeah,
that's what made Quentin
yeah.
appear. Exactly.
well, the vampire motif, you could probably do a full episode on that. I mean,
We could.
That is true. Oh, fantastic! Right.
No, so in St. Thomas, what was the order of brothers?
Oh, oh gosh, we should know that. So
Franciscan,
well, they know.
Severian brothers.
Well,
I feel
Zavarian
like,
was in Nazareth. That was.
yeah, I don't remember,
Yeah.
man. I'm
Did,
embarrassed to say. I
did
should
you
know.
have any kind of like were there any brothers who had like a special title? Like I remember like in Nazareth there was a guy, he was Brother John of the Cross, I don't
No,
know
wow,
what that
that's
means.
intense. That sounds
Yeah,
terrible.
it's like that
Yeah.
reminds me of that movie Nuns on the Run. There was
Yeah.
Sister Euphemia of the Five Wounds, like did you have anybody like that in the
No, but that's yeah. No, I met her years later, but that's another
You
story.
did? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's good. Yeah.
Do you guys remember Father Pote?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Father Pote, who had a very who had a bit of a reputation. So very quickly, there was an incident that happened right after high school that would maybe go into another time, but there were police involved and different sort of things that were destroyed. One in particular, but anyway, one night that we had nothing to do that. Well, we're going to set that record straight again. But anyway, not to sound all mysterious, but the point of the story is I was there was the Glen Bar on Flatlands Avenue, and I was walking home one kind of early-ish in the evening on a Friday or something like that. I was walking on Flatlands, and I ran into Father Pote, and he was making, he used to prowl around the neighborhood, and I mean, of course, this time probably about 18 or 19, and he comes up to me, goes, "What's your name?" And I said, "You know me," and he goes, "What's your name?" And I told him. He goes, "Yes, I do know you." And we started kind of arguing on the corner, and at one point he like shoved his finger into my chest and said, "If you want to talk to me, you know where to find me. Come to the rectory tomorrow morning." Right. So it was really amazing, man. I have to mention this, that like I woke up really early Saturday morning. It was about 8 a.m., 9 a.m. And I walked down to the rectory and knocked on the door, and this woman answered the door, and I said, "I'm here to see Father Pote." And she said, Who are you?" I said, "I'm Stephen Dima. He's expecting me." And I have to say, it was one of those like great lessons of life, of judging a book and not, because he took me into his office, and this is cool, right? I mean, um, and
Scary, interesting,
he talked to me. We ended up talking for like 4 hours, and it was brilliant. And he was amazingly, we talked about art and music, a little bit about Jesus, right? But, we talked about the neighborhood. We talked about his reputation. We talked about, I felt like I was like some, representative or something of the, if the kids in the neighborhood was like sort of a nonprofit, you know what I mean? That I was like a board member, president of the board or something, representing, like both saying like, like basically my whole thing was like, you don't understand like do you really, instead of just like smacking kids in the head, do you talk to them? You say, well, the old ladies like it when I, every now and then I have to, kick a kid or something, just so, keep up my reputation. But I always loved that and always respected that. And I remembered him all my life as sort of giving me that time, like literally 4 hours, and just talking about life. And we talked about Beckett, we talked about plays and art and music. We even talked about the Beatles, Mark. It was incredible.
I had my own sit down with him, and it was as a result of that incident. My father wanted to make a point clear to them, and so my father, my mother, I think it was just my father and me. I don't remember my mother participating. She had she looked very cynically at the Catholic Church, though she was a practicing Catholic who worked for Catholic charities. Whole complicated story there. But so we show up, and I remember the joke to this day Father Pote made. We sit down across from him, and he's making us at ease. And my father had an executive presence. He later had an Oscar Madison presence, but at this stage,
which is also great. Go ahead.
He was in his John Hamm presence kind of thing,
Got it.
Madman presence with the suit and everything. So he sits down, and he's clearly a man that you're going to talk seriously with. And he goes in, and he's a little late, and he comes in, and I'm sorry, my wife was snoring all night, My dad and I started looking at each other nervously, and then I started saying, "They're not supposed to get married, right?" underneath my breath to my father, and he kept waving me away. And I was wondering if there was some tablet article I missed that, hey, now priests can get married. But it was already intimidating with the whole ornate chambers and the robes and stuff. For him to make a joke was a trip. And what happened is he goes, I'm kidding. And then we had a nice conversation. So my father kind of knew him because he did some charity stuff. He drove that big Mercedes Benz.
Mercedes, that's right. That's all everybody knew and all everybody talked about. It's like, oh, Father Pote, he takes all the money. Everyone, he drives around the neighborhood with,
Yeah, but my experience was as equally positive as yours. So
no, it's great. I mean, it's nice, and I liked. I'd rather look back and remember that. I'm sure he wasn't a saint, right? Who is, right? But
there was a it's interesting. Like there was a big separation between the priests and the nuns, at least in our parish.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I was an altar boy, so I knew the priests a little bit better than a lot of other people did because I saw them at their, at 6:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
And from time to time we would serve mass in the convent, and it was very strange, I have to tell you, and it had almost like a medieval feel to it,
Sure.
this nunnery. But, I think they really nailed it in that movie Doubt,
Hmm.
because in the beginning of the film, they show, the priests are like, they're drinking wine, they're eating steaks, and and then they flash to the convent, and the women are eating this like grizzled meat and they're drinking milk, But there really was a big, dichotomy between the priests and the nuns, at least in our parish anyway.
Well, the archetype is the big Franciscan monk who's drinking beer and eating mutton,
Right.
and
Yeah.
with a
When I
bad
think
hair.
of, yeah, when you say nunnery, I think of like, those little baby nuns, and they're like, they're like, they're like on all these little cribs, a little nunnery. They're
When I
waiting.
started Catholic school, I mean, the nuns, they looked like penguins. They really did. They had these black flowing robes with the white celluloid bib and the collars, and their faces were framed in this thing. And, it was really funny. I remember one of the, this was in like second grade or so, they used to tell us that they were brides of Christ. And they wore, and this one, I remember nun
We're
showing us
married
her
to the
wedding.
Lord.
Yeah, she had a wedding band, and she was
Oh, my
saying,
Lord.
I'm married to Christ. I'm a bride.
Literally.
Yeah. And,
I-
and one thing I really, really remember about, the nuns was like really, this had to be first or second grade, where they got into this blow by blow description of the passion of the Christ,
Right.
the scourging, the blood, the spitting, the crucifixion, the whole, and you're like 6 or 7 years old and you're listening to this and it's like, you're horrified. I guess that was the purpose. I don't know, to scare you to death. But it was like far worse than I think anything Mel Gibson portrayed in that film.
Well, Bill, your imagination will run wild. Bill Regal, a good friend of mine, who doesn't mind me mentioning his name, he wants to join on at some point. He had the Queen's experience, and he was very adamant that his Jewish wife, right, convert after they got married, and she's like, she was sort of a non-practicing Jewish girl, and he brings her to like one of the most boring,
Excellent. Yeah.
like that moaning singing they used to do. And she looks up and it happens to be a particularly gruesome version of Jesus on the cross, and she says to him, you believe that there was a human sacrifice, 2,000 years ago? And so she goes, this isn't working for me, Bill. You got to soften it up. So he ends up, you got to figure something out. And so they converted to like some soft version of Protestantism. I'm not sure which one. And she doesn't participate. She doesn't believe in the human sacrifice or the Pope is infallible. But one of the things I wanted to get across in this, and we'll do a part 2, is that all of a sudden I wake up somewhere in, I don't know, in my 20s or 30s, and I just embrace being as good a person as I could be. I think it's that all day long being hammered morality, even if they didn't mean it, right? Well, they were
Yeah. If they didn't mean it. Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think if they didn't mean it on its own, but yeah, no, I hear you. I think that that's true. I mean, I think that that's something that I struggle. But I also, I also think that a lot of it was because they were actually the ones that I experienced that I like to talk about all the time, putting Miss Grosso aside, was that they were good people.
Well, how about
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Ending on a positive note.
Well, thanks so much, Steve, for joining us today and for another episode of
The Brooklyn Junction.
Brooklyn Junction. And we'd love to have you back. And hopefully my brother Tom can join us, and as well as some other characters from the past.
Is this a Quinn Martin production? Anyway, sorry, that's a...
This is brought to you by Desi Lou.
No, well, Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows was, I think, a Quinn Martin production. Anyway, sorry. I apologize. I had a great time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Just slide away.